So as Marcello introduced there, this is all about volunteer stories in gardens and consideration and kickstarting the discussion as whether we can use this qualitative information and experiences as SDG metrics. SDG, of course, being Sustainable Development Goals. And obviously there's a whole range of these that we need to be working towards collectively, locally and globally. And I'm hoping this could be part of that effort in achieving such global goals, in particular with regards to health and well-being. But hopefully, could potentially link in with metrics for a whole range of the other SDGs, and maybe we can have a little chat about that towards the end. I'm hoping this image kind of opens this talk, getting you thinking about volunteering and gardens. Sometimes, gardens come at the dismay of many directors and curators and herbarium curators, plant collection managers and horticulturalists and various other great individuals in these communities. And sometimes, dismay at the superficial kind of perceptions of a lot of these places and spaces, especially botanic gardens. But I'll talk a little bit about that in a sec. But thanks ever so much for your interest. I'm glad you've made it today to this talk. So why am I doing this? What's the whole point in this? Well, as you've gathered from the title, it's by exploring these stories and gardens, using them as metrics, focusing on health and well-being, especially as transformative health and well-being changes as a result of volunteering. But why? What's the point? Measuring these sustainable development goals are, of course, really important, an ongoing aim for many organisations. Botanic gardens being one, with the likes of Sharrock and Jackson stating that over the coming years will be valuable for botanic gardens, these places, to further define their roles in achievement of sustainable development goals and promote greater awareness and support for plant conservation within this new framework and priorities for global development. And it was that statement really that really sparked off me thinking about this. Well, how are we going to measure various goals? Of course, a lot of the discussions across the botanic garden communities have been very much focused on plant sciences and conservation and research surrounding the plants and the collections and the work being done with regards to that and the various botanical aspects. Whereas me in the business school, all a bit incongruous with that kind of traditional ecosystem ecology studies and that kind of thing. I'm coming at it from a more anthropocentric way. So, of course, business school, I'm thinking about the accountancy and business and marketing of botanic gardens, and in particular, putting a spotlight on volunteers and that element to these businesses, because they are in many ways businesses, whatever the sector, public, private and voluntary, is certainly running as businesses nowadays. So it's that statement by Sharrock and Jackson, Susan Sharrock working for a key work director in the Botanic Garden Conservation International organisation, which oversees or represents all the botanic gardens worldwide, and Jackson is one of the big directors of botanic gardens and big authors of the work in these unique places. So it's that statement and chance discussions with volunteers at gardens which really led to this research. And from here on in, I name the research as TSR, Transformative Service Research, which is actually a sub-discipline to services marketing. And it's all about marketing the intangible. So I'd seen from thinking more about this, I'd found that there's certainly gaps with online presence on websites on how these services and very much kind of co-creative services between gardens and volunteers was certainly lacking. I should say opportunities exist. So TSR, you're probably thinking, what is this transformative service research all about? Well, it's defined by Anderson as research that centres on creating uplifting changes and improvements in the well-being of both individuals and communities, which seeks to better the quality of life of present and future generations of consumers and citizens through services. As such, it examines aspects such as the social and ecological consequences and benefits of services offerings, increased access to valued services, the disparity in quality of service offerings to different groups, the design and co-creation of services with consumers that honours both the agency and the cultural values of individuals and communities, the identification of and planning for the impact of services on well-being and sustainability, and the impact of consumers' service experiences on well-being. In addition to adding to conceptual development, TSR, Transformative Service Research, strives to capture and reach ideas and innovations that are framed by fundamental problems and opportunities and provide understanding, service strategies, and/or solutions to build better and sustainable futures. So it's using the power and I suppose pervasiveness of marketing, but with a whole different take, and with regards to the likes of sustainable development goals or global goals that we've been really debating about since well, for a long time, aren't we? 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s in particular, and then over recent years with various summits and these goals being put in place. So there's certainly a need to address various challenges with gardens. We found that volunteering's, gardens and volunteering in this sphere of literature and research, this TSR, Transformative Service Research, is rather unique. So that's going to be a key element and aim. Studies certainly advanced service research in the context of gardens and volunteers for the first time. Rosenbaum and others introduced TSR around 2007 and encouraged an ongoing review of person-place relationships, how welfare is promoted via exchanges of an intangible nature within service context. In this case, the service nexus or interconnectedness, if you like, between gardens and volunteers, and vice versa. Producers, consumers, co-creators of all kinds of outcomes and consequences and that kind of thing. Very positive with regards to this study. Based on the BGCI, the Botanic Garden Conservation International volunteer data, it's clear that volunteers are the lifeblood in many cases of the gardens management and the gardens they serve. Dovanisic highlights that volunteers keep many of these places from coming under threat of decline or closure. However, gardens volunteers seem to be missing, as I say, from the extant literature regarding TSR. Many opportunities exist for service marketing practice, despite much positive collective societal health and well-being gardens and volunteering create, which is certainly found across these volunteer stories, which I'll put a bit of a spotlight on shortly. So TSR, this transformative service research, is a theoretical lens and modus operandi methodology enables us as academics and practitioners and planners, developers, managers, policymakers and everyday people to consider novel ways of providing important insights for formal and or informal strategic decision making, action planning and related provision to ultimately make people and places better. So there's a need to address ongoing challenges that many gardens face, financial challenges, there's various barriers, constraints, maybe limited support from traditional sources or lack of awareness of value, importance of gardens, patterns of and trends of decline of some gardens as establishments of services has certainly been observed since the 1960s, and many still under continued threat. So the importance and value of gardens and volunteering, is something that we need to really sort of keep looking at, keep reviewing, and certainly these above mentioned challenges, alongside health and well-being aspects and these other sustainable development goals are really key. A lot of managers, marketers still lack detail which would contribute to informed decisions regarding services marketing. A number of authors state that further studies are needed into services linked to institutions and their arrangements which facilitate coordination across service ecosystems. Paravitz highlights the need for further studies to deepen the knowledge about marketing linked to services, and price questions calls for debate on the nature of marketing and being prepared to embark on imaginative, attentive studies of the full continuum of interactions and creative production across places, services, people and social systems. So it's certainly a unique underexplored area of study, and I hope this will have some good contribution and impact. So the study aims to explore opportunities to consider volunteer stories as metrics of SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, an approach not really touched upon across the extant literature. Due to the nature of conversations with volunteers, it was obvious that gardens are certainly transformative for health and well-being, and we have seen this in some studies in other disciplines. So moving on, impact. We're really hoping that we're going to have this transformative health and well-being, putting a spotlight on this, and outcomes of increased mindful participation, model or working model of measuring SDGs using such qualitative information from people's stories, an enhanced understanding of place, gardens and where they sit within place and the connections with places. Of course, a lot of the plants come from all kinds of places worldwide, but when we think of gardens like Botanic gardens in particular, have all kinds of research and conservation activities going on, connecting with universities and private sector and NGOs, non-governmental organisations worldwide. And of course, service marketing and transformative service research opportunities are a key impact to this study. So just to differentiate gardens and botanic gardens are institutions holding documented collections of living plants for the purpose of scientific research, conservation, display and education. So quite different, quite unique with regards to other gardens. And we can see, the definition of these gardens when you read a bit more about these, you can see, a whole history going back to ancient times, really. But the modern botanic garden is rooted in Italy, with the Orto Botanico di Pisa. I think 1543 was the conception of our modern day botanic gardens, and early on very much for medical studies, pharmacies, linked to academic study and the collection of, you know, all kinds of plants on those trade routes passing through that part of Italy. And that whole trend from the 1500s onwards, these botanic gardens just grew into a global ecosystem of botanic gardens, if you like, and also connect with lots of other different gardens. I'm fascinated with these places, but as a horticulturalist by trade, that's no surprise if you know my background. So on the BGCI, the Botanic Garden Conservation International site, their search facility last count highlighted 3,021 botanic gardens worldwide, and I suppose these come under the guise of arboreta and you know, certain types of collections of plants in all wonderful different guises. So yeah, as I say, you know, botanic gardens are all part of an international botanic garden family and community with diverse research activities, conservation and education programs, and displays of collections. We know that botanic gardens have a major part to play in global goals. These places are well loved and well visited. I couldn't think of a better field trip to a botanic garden myself, or gardens just in general, any kind of gardens, from private gardens to, you know, these more, you know, in many cases, public type gardens, public accessible gardens, should I say. So they have varied ownership, provision, expertise, management, marketing practice attached to these places, staffing, volunteers and friends, visitor economy offerings. These gardens worldwide either have access to a great deal of or have limited access regarding backing, finance, funding, support, provision and resources. Botanic gardens, like their collections and wonderful, insightful, proactive communities, also reveal a range of creativity and innovation to drive their policies, planning and developments. And with today's focus on, you know, these sustainable development goals, certain policies, plans, developments informed by such research, certainly key with regards to a strategic approach. So thinking about, going back to that statement about volunteers being the lifeblood, I just took a random sample of botanic gardens here, some firm favourites for many. And you can see here just the difference, I suppose, your staff versus volunteer numbers. Yeah. I suppose with the exception of Royal Botanic Garden, Edinburgh, yeah, all the rest seem to have a very strong volunteer community. So it made sense to me to, you know, sort of to really delve deeper into this. But like I said, it was chance discussions. It was actually one particular chap in one of the gardens. I just got speaking to him. And before I knew it, it's like giving me the life story and how transformative the impact of him, you know, working in this garden is. He'd been there all his life, most of his life, and didn't even realise the garden existed. Anyway, so studying these stories, you know, gives us all kinds of insights: economic, social, cultural, environmental insights, and certain opportunities to garner or to glean achievements of SDGs out of this information. So I'm hoping we can innovate on Botanic Gardens' aims and activities in relation to SDGs, and thinking about the varying roles, responsibilities, opportunities within these places, but also like I said, this interconnection across the places where these sit, I suppose, a place ecosystem, the sectors, organizations, groups, individuals, and all the different policies, regulations, partnerships, innovations, enterprise, and all the different things that come together, which we can maybe cross-reference, and, you know, we'll see how that pans out. It is a work in progress. Many of these places make the most out of potential partnerships that bring a whole wealth of expertise and driving forces for gardens to meet their aims and these SDGs via their volunteers. So we look to this wealth of means and potential opportunities to develop and make positive change. Could certainly harness what we have learned from all sorts of trends, ideas and innovations to suit our botanic gardens in particular, which will be place specific and you know, something that we can really build upon with regards to that diversity, similar to the diversity in the gardens themselves. You know, with all the plants, the people are certainly as diverse in many ways. So this is like little mapping of the beginning of my research, and these volunteer stories at the centre, and getting us thinking about the volunteering in these botanic gardens, and also potential of, you know, gleaning sustainable development goals, achievements. And then it's bringing me more to think about this service research and, you know, also place management and place marketing and place development body of knowledge as well. So that's certainly, there's so much in those areas that I think can bring some good opportunities to how we, you know, market the services in these places, especially with regards to volunteering, the power and impact of volunteering. So just to remind you, with transformative service research, it's there to attempt for us to understand how to create and sustain collective well-being, positive social impact, create experiences that deliver uplifting changes, develop solutions that improve well-being of individuals, families, communities, and broader society, and also attempt to understand and improve relationships between various stakeholders participating in service, and again, opportunities as well. So it makes complete sense to me that TSR, this transformative service research, goes together well with botanic gardens or gardens and volunteering, because it is so transformative. You know, look at, you're reviewing these stories. Many reasons for the purpose and aims of gardens, and the impacts and outcomes of volunteering, management challenges gardens face, and of course the places and ecosystems gardens are trying to enhance or protect or represent or celebrate. So it's important to highlight the transformative nature of those involved in the development of such places. So that is certainly really important. And there's a quote here from Anderson and others that states, transformative service research is research that should strive to transform the relationship among social, economic, environmental systems to ensure sustainable relationships. So I'm hoping it is in keeping with, you know, our theme in SustainNET and our aims as a community in SustainNET. So talking of place management, you're probably wondering, you know, what is this? Very kind of brief, maybe a bit of a crude definition. It's a coordinated area-based multi-stakeholder approach to improve locations, harnessing the skills, experiences and resources of those in the private, public and voluntary sector. And this is by no means, you know, uncommon across lots of disciplines and lots of, you know, practice, this idea of collaborative approaches and citizen participation, if you like, and all those kinds of elements. So I'm hoping this TSR and place management marketing efforts can, you know, can be considered for ongoing garden developments, especially in service marketing, among other opportunities regarding, of course, for me being in the business school, the accountancy, business and marketing of gardens. So you wanting to know what I found from these stories? What is it that they've been talking about? So there's a little word cloud. No surprise, there's a lot of talk of volunteering and gardens. And I've merged a lot of words in this clever software that analyze and mines, you know, transcripts and what people are saying in conversations. And I've certainly had an approach where it's been very much, exploratory, as I said, just off the cuff discussions. And I always carry a little pad with me. So I'm jotting down later on all my new insights about these different people's conversations. I've had emails, telephone conversations. And on the back of that, I put together an online survey, which was you could use on mobiles and tablets and on websites and that kind of thing. So just to get more information about these really interesting and insightful stories from like-minded people. Me being a volunteer myself, maybe part of this could be an auto ethnography where I kind of sort of explore my own experiences as a volunteer over the years. But anyway, let's have a look at these other people, what they had to say. So I broke that down in some other software. So this was using a software package called NVivo plus 12. And I used this other text mining text and analytical tool called Leximancer. And this is what it seemed to draw on all the different 54 conversations that I've used for this, even though there's so many more. I've just used focused on these 54. And this is the kind of themes, if you like, key ideas and themes that came out of those discussions, these stories. So there's quite a lot about emotion and engaging and new life. And there's one quote from one lot of discussions where this woman had said, it's life-saving, it's soul-saving. And I just, it really touched on my senses. And I thought, this is certainly powerful stuff. And more so when we started getting into the health aspects, some of the quotes regarding health, in particular, the likes of structuring people's daily lives and mental health and physical health and that kind of thing. And I learned quite a bit about this from different people in other sectors, but not so much the garden. So I was really interested in what the people were saying, their experiences in these gardens. So here's some little quotes I've taken out of those stories, some of those conversations. So here we've got, I felt that there was purpose to my life. And many people there were feeling the same way. My self-confidence, mental health has improved a huge amount, as has my physical health. Aside from the obvious benefits of getting out in the fresh air, it has given me back some structure. Antidepressants quickly became a thing of the past within 3 months of starting as a volunteer. I mean, that's powerful information, right? And obviously, we really could do with cross-referencing this with maybe, GP records or that kind of thing. Pharmacies, maybe, I don't know, community pharmacies. Volunteering, giving me structure to my week that I was hoping for. What else have we got here? Positive experience for my mental and physical well-being. Good to meet fellow volunteers on a regular basis, hence positive social aspect. Find gardening, even mundane duties, therapeutic. They come do a bit of gardening around ours and some of those more mundane duties. Feel positive about doing volunteering work, a lot healthier to be in the outdoors as opposed to staying inactive indoors. I'm 67, but planning a longer life. Volunteering helps this goal. So here, there's quite a lot of these really heavy emotional statements as well that came out in the less sort of face-to-face discussions, but more online discussions, more anonymous. discussions in many cases, but there's this one here. Immediately prior to volunteering, I was in intensive outpatient treatment for anorexia nervosa, signed off work for following multiple suicide attempts, very lost, very isolated, very lonely, very scared, very tired, very anxious, very ashamed, and trying to hide all of this. Life was free falling into a great big black hole, but I'm still here and have volunteered nearly every week doing this whole time. Anorexia, still in recovery, but getting more recovered on balance. Won't miss out on the opportunity for my coffee and biscuits when I'm volunteering. Physical health, so much stronger, more robust, less tired, sleeping a bit better. Mental health, handling the crisis point much better. And the anxiety is, let's have a little look at this. Sorry about this. The anxiety, where was I? It's still hideous off and on, but goes mostly when I'm volunteering. When I'm volunteering in the garden. So, I mean, I just think it's such powerful information that can be used as metrics for SDG, especially as the SDG on health and well-being. And this, just wanted to sort of just leave us on this one. I mean, this is out of so many different discussions and conversations, but this is one that I just loved. I love my life now. Volunteering is just the best thing ever. And I certainly can agree with this participant of this study. So I love my life now. Volunteering is just the best thing ever. So coming back to the services marketing part of it, part of this study, you know, where does this begin? More often than not, it's online now, isn't it? How many of us, you know, every now and then looking at our smartphones or tablets or what have you, or what do we do when we're wanting to find out about something? But it's certainly, you know, online, isn't it? And that'll be the first encounter with a garden, botanic garden, and information on volunteering. I really do see botanic gardens as hubs, you know, representatives of all gardens surrounding those kind of hubs, those botanic gardens. And they all have so much to offer. This community has so much to offer. And also the interconnections between, you know, government, local authorities, private sector, like I was saying before, GP, doctors, GP practices, pharmacies, and the whole range, you know, kind of health, well-being sector. Anyway, considering transformative service, place management and volunteering, certainly a wealth of opportunities and representation of gardens. There's an attraction and value of volunteering communicated via many different means, which we can learn from and consider. Gardens worldwide are certainly innovating on their purpose and their opportunities to learn from one another, our experiences, values, beliefs, research aims, actions, plans and policies born out of many of these experiences, these narratives. So yeah, I mean, I've done a little, I suppose, review of some of these websites, and there's certainly opportunities to highlight the unique volunteering stories of those particular places and the gardens, and not necessarily just gardens, but other, you know, work that's connected with these places. You know, it could be a tea room, could be a nursing home, it could be, you know, all kinds of different experience, different examples, opportunities there. So yeah, quite exciting places, hotbeds of opportunities. And just look at some of these places. I mean, you know, here we have some images of quite futuristic. I don't know what I've done here with the autumnal one there. I should have a summer summer scene there for the Eden project there, my apologies. But we have the Oman Botanic Garden there, National Botanic Garden Wales, Singapore Botanic Gardens, Eden Project down in Cornwall, Alice Springs Desert Park in the Red Centre in Australia. All great innovations on the Botanic Garden and connections to other gardens and beyond, as I say, across communities and places, local to global. A Botanic Garden ecosystem, a family of Botanic Gardens, multiple complex place ecosystems and all the interactions that go with it, from that traditional ecosystem to more of this diverse offering. I think ecosystem as a model is one of the most used models across so many different disciplines now, and in particular within the business school, the likes of service ecosystems and entrepreneurial ecosystems, and the list is endless, you know. But I'm trying to get us thinking in that systems way, if you like. So whether small or large, owned by public, private, voluntary sectors with little or large budgets, with limited staff and volunteers, or a wealth of staff and volunteers, our stories, our creativity, innovation, and collaborative partnerships can certainly enrich the aim and purpose of botanic gardens and gardens worldwide, but also benefit plants, people, places, and the planet who may depend upon cutting-edge research, conservation and education of our global botanic garden family, and, of course, Sustainable Development Goal achievements. So means, tools for capturing such stories. There's so much big data out there. Lots going on locally, nationally. So many volunteer communities doing so much great work, and as you can see in those staff to volunteer ratios, you know, there certainly are in many cases, you know, with alongside obviously the collections of plants, there's certainly you know, the lifeblood of these places. Yeah, all kinds of exciting things going on. So yeah, tools for capturing such stories. There's so much big data and information out there, and also communicated transformative services of volunteering, and the research, of course, conservation, education, and certainly the displays of collections to the world of gardens and plants are now vast. Most of these places and a lot of gardens and other settings can certainly make good use of such means to develop their purpose or communicate their purpose, their activities, and reach out to local, global audiences, even if the resources available to an organisation is just one main channel for marketing, for communicating these different elements, in this case the stories, the volunteering stories, and you can really nurture that one channel and then branch out as you've got used to that channel of communication and marketing, services marketing in particular, quite difficult marketing the intangible. So again, just like volunteering, everything we do has implications, impacts, consequences, and outcomes, as we've seen just from that very small, small spotlight on some of those quotes of from the stories of volunteers. So yeah, it's to communicate those key messages and connect to the stories and achievements in each place and the connections interlinked, thinking beyond originating institutions and organisations, but potential for interconnected and cross-referencing with other sectors, organisations, groups and individuals. And as I say, obviously health and well-being sectors, the GP practices, pharmacies, and all those kind of elements where we can triangulate or, like I say, cross-reference some of this information and really, build these as metrics, as a model for metrics to look at, to review and to highlight indicators of sustainable development goal achievement. So environmental, social, cultural and economic transformative services and the salience, the importance of gardens and volunteers service value are significant, which can be evidenced and mapped across to SDGs, these sustainable development goals. So therefore, there's much scope to continue TSR, this transformative service research associated with gardens and volunteers, linking long-term vision, mission, aims, objectives, plans, and sustainable and responsible developments for improved collective and societal well-being as part of this growing TSR agenda. Gardens and volunteers have an important role as transformative service providers, co-creators, producers, consumers, and all that comes with that: research, conservation, working with displays of documented collections of plants, involved in education and the various environmental, social, cultural and economic enterprise. So time to say thanks, and maybe it's a bit belated, we should have had this a couple of weeks ago during volunteer week. But anyway, it's the time to say thanks to all those wonderful volunteers that have contributed to this study. Big thank you to all of you. May this idea and practice continue to strengthen and create positive, transformative change. Anyway, thanks ever so much for having me. Your time and attention is much appreciated. Spread the word. Volunteering is powerful in so many ways. If you have any volunteer stories across any settings, do let me know. I'd be certainly very interested in your story and your voice and voices. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. It was very interesting. Is there anyone with any questions?
It's Neil Robinson here, Nick.
Hi, Neil.
Yeah, hi. Is it okay to ask a question, Marcella?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so I really enjoyed the presentation. I thought your observations about the mental health, disability and all that area was interesting. I know at my daughter's school, they're a horticultural approved primary school, and they used to have 2 hours a week, a gardening club in which they used to sit down, have a coffee, have a chat and do a bit of gardening. And I thought it was really good that even at that stage, they were recognising the importance of mental health, well-being, the garden environment and so on. And it's just an observation as much as anything. I thought some of your comments and the narrative word about that individual who was in a very dark place, I thought was interesting. And whether you want to say a little bit more about that importance of well-being, mental health in the context of the garden.
Yeah, well, to be honest, we've known about this for a long time, the benefits of being outdoors, fresh airs, there's biophilia, being kind of submerged in these green spaces. But with regards to business and services and marketing, there's not a huge amount on it. It's quite a lot on community-based activities and a lot of garden schools and urban green spaces and that kind of thing. And there is a lot of crossover there. But also with regards to this is this metrics element. So we found that a lot of coordinators and people managing these gardens as businesses are realize the power in a lot of this qualitative information, but finding it kind of difficult to create markers and indicators with that. So we know quite a bit, but it's trying to use this information, this big data, in a way that we can really use it as good sound metrics to then share across the world and government and the UN and various stakeholders to really realize the impact of the achievements. So it's still a way off trying to capture a lot of that information, through qualitative information, if you know what I mean. So yeah, so there's quite a lot out there, but not necessarily through this transformative service kind of area, and marketing that more as well, and using the people's experiences more. I know there's quite a lot, you know, the likes of some of our great landowners and charities and NGOs and Quangos that do look after a lot of gardens across the UK, for instance, across Britain and Ireland. There's, you know, there is quite a lot of great practice, but it's the case of bringing that more into this, you know, into our policy making and, you know, informing our practice with this information.
Hello, I'm just going to
Sure.
butt in here. My name's Sona Edwards. I work for Learning Services. In the past, I worked for British Trust for Conservation Volunteers, and I led a green gym. And the green gym, I don't know if you know it. It is it's a volunteer conservation organisation, and we went and we did gardening, and we did general conservation, to be honest, across a particular site in Blackburn it was at the time, but there's still some of these set up all over the place. They've got allotments for it as well, but they have an awful lot of research for that, and it's been going many years. I don't know if you've ever touched on that in your past.
No, not a huge amount with the green gym. Certainly similar kind of exercise and fitness and regimes out in these places and spaces, like yoga in the gardens, and you know, jogging, running around gardens. Actually, gardens and places being prescribed by doctors, you know, just kind of instead of antidepressants. So I'll certainly have a little look at that. Cheers, Sonia.
Yeah, because I left there, gosh, it must be over 15 years ago now, but I applied for a BIFA fund, and it was over £30,000 that I applied for, and I started up the first green gym in Blackburn, and it's still going to this day.
Fantastic.
There's over 20 people every Thursday that go to Whitton Country Park in Blackburn. But if you go to just, it's called TCV now, website, and look up green gym, that'll be a good place to start.
Great. Yeah, I've seen similar kind of thing. I mean, there's loads out there, isn't there? There's so much.
Because groundwork, we're also doing it as well. I don't know if you know about groundwork.
Yeah,
they were our competition at the time.
They've been going since the 80s, haven't they, I think?
Yes,
70s,
same with
80s.
BTCV. They are the major competition, but groundwork have more machines involved, whereas BTCV are just arm power.
Yeah, I mean, look at it, a lot of the volunteer associations and representative groups, there's so many statistics and so much great information, especially over this past year or so. You know, it's the rise in volunteers and the kind of impacts of that has been phenomenal, really. But still, there's this, it's almost like this means, you know, like looking at the stats of the staff and volunteers, there's this great wealth and means of what would you say, you know, volunteer power and experiences and the impacts of all these people and then their knock-on effects. But how we can use that a lot more effectively, I'm sure, especially as managers and marketeers, you know, obviously from our discipline, the business school, they're thinking about accountancy as well, being, you know, accounted for with regards to, you know, these achievements and impacts. It's something a lot of directors are talking about. How do we measure, you know, our sustainable development goal achievements? But a lot of the discussions, like I said at the beginning, are surrounding kind of the plant world and plant sciences and botany. And actually, there's so many other, you know, so many other opportunities there. And I think we see quite a lot of those opportunities in these urban green spaces and school gardens and various other community garden settings. But still, there's that opportunity to bring that together more and to sort of to create more model or discussions around models and approaches, methodologies for really capturing this. You know, something we can generalize across places and spaces, and not necessarily just gardens, you know.
I think BTCV sign was joining people and places together.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that
Oh, I
was,
love that.
was nice. But I think if you search down that line, you will find quite a lot more, because obviously when I did my bid, I had to search, and that was, like I say, 15 years ago. So maybe it's just kind of run out over time, but it was there back then.
Fab.
Yeah. Anyway, I must leave you now, but thank you very much.
No worries. Oh, thanks, Sonia.
That's all right.
Neil, did I answer
Yeah,
your question? I was a bit around the houses.
No, I think you did. It was perfect. Last one from me. I've got to go. I've got a meeting with one of your colleagues, but it was interesting from a social political narrative perspective. I remember going to the Liverpool Garden Festival with my parents in the 80s. And I remember this kind of coal, not dole, and this kind of a juxtaposition between the Conservative Thatcher rule and the haves and the have-nots. And I've been back to the garden centre before it was redeveloped, and I remember looking at it in its dilapidated state and what it once was, and the Liverpool yellow submarine and the dragon that was just kind of left overgrown. So I do think there's kind of a social political perspective to gardens as well, and how they were once the grandeur of the wealthy, and there is kind of a political undertone to some developments of that kind of gardening metaphor, if you will.
Yeah, hugely. And just the types of volunteers, I've found quite a bit in that information as well. When we look at kind of demographic information, there's a lot of scope for, again, thinking about marketing more and engaging and enriching a more ethnic diversity of volunteers in these places, because the impacts are phenomenal.
Well, I've got a few things here. I've got the LGBTQ, Black Lives Matter. It can take on a whole number of different, perspectives from minority groups and involvement of them accordingly. Right, I've got to go, Nick. It was brilliant. Look after yourself.
No worries. Thanks ever so much. Yeah, brilliant.
Thanks again for your interesting presentation. And by the way, I love your shirt.
Oh, yes. I'm famed for my botanical printed shirts. I think I have one for, well, maybe not one for every day of the year, but